Shalom, holy initiates and holy adepts. I am the Chief Magician of Mystery Babylon, and I will be your host and master for this very holy divine teaching. Now, I want to make a few very critical, momentous points, preliminary points, before I begin the actual teaching. So the first is that indeed I will be exposing a lot of stupidity and ignorance in this video. A lot of ignorance and stupidity that is specifically very prevalent among the religious community, specifically Christians, Messianic Jews, and even to a large extent Jews. So there's a lot of prevalent ignorance, and I would go as far as to say even stupidity, and of course tons of spiritual blindness. And I'm going to be exposing a lot of that in this very holy divine teaching. Now, before I begin, I want to mention something very, very important that recently occurred with me, and the reason why I'm doing this very powerful holy teaching. So, as many of you, I hope, have come to know, I do my best to study the Holy Talmud on a daily basis. In fact, there are Jewish websites online. I think there's one called Daf Yomi, which is, one daf of Talmud per day. A daf is Hebrew for a page. So there are Jews that encourage and motivate Jews to study one page of the Talmud per day, or one folio of the Talmud per day. And like many of my brethren, I try to study, the Talmud daily. Now, a few days ago, in line with this, I was studying what I consider to be a very powerful passage in the Talmud, which we're going to be discussing here in this video shortly. And this passage had everything to do with the Holy Divine Matronita. And as I was meditating and penetrating the text, I felt really unctioned, by Shekhinah. I could really feel the presence of Malchuth, and her basically just, I felt she was basically calling me. I guess it's hard. I'm finding it difficult to find the words to express, what was happening to me spiritually. But I felt this very powerful unctioning, I guess you could say, from Malchuth, about what I was meditating and studying. And what ended up happening was I basically said, you know what? I think the next video that I want to do is a video on, this passage in the Talmud, and just the divine wisdom that is encrypted and encoded within this passage, because it has everything to do with the Holy Goddess. And as we know, the Matronita is currently in a fallen state. And so I just felt really, really unctioned and really driven to do this video that I'm doing even now as I speak. And so what ended up happening was, I think a few days later, I had a very, very powerful vision of Shekhinah. I ended up getting her attention through certain spiritual activities that took place and that I performed. And I had a very, very powerful vision of Shekhinah, where she appeared before me. And the best way to describe the vision is, it felt very similar to, Musha's vision of the Holy Goddess, during the burning bush incident, right? As we know, Musha saw, this burning bush. Now, for those that are initiated, you know that this incident has everything to do with the Holy Goddess and is completely tied to the Holy Goddess. And what he was experiencing was esoterically a very powerful holy vision of the Holy Goddess. And my vision felt very similar to this. And she basically spoke with me face to face. And, I can't go into all the details, but what I can say is that the last thing that she spoke to me, that she told me, was that she made reference to a passage that I had been studying in the Talmud. And so essentially what she was doing was, on one level, she was referring to this Talmudic passage that I was meditating on, as well as blessing me for studying and penetrating the Holy Talmud. And this was very, very powerful. I mean, I hope all of you listening can just understand the implications and the ramifications of this. You know, we have to understand that the only people that have visions of Shekhinah are the Jews that we read about in antiquity, the ancient sages and the ancient prophets and ancient divine men. These are the only Israelite Jewish men that we know that had visions of Shekhinah. But for 2,000 years, there hasn't really been any Jews that have had actual visions of Shekhinah other than the Mashiachim and maybe a few grandmasters. Okay, so I hope this is proof to all of you listening that indeed I'm the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, and why I'm the chief magician of Mystery Babylon. Okay, that I am indeed a grandmaster of grandmasters. And besides that, the only Ephraimites or Israelites that we have are the Catholics, because it is the Catholics, they're the only Christians that have any understanding or perception of the Holy Goddess through the Holy Virgin Miriam, the mother of Yeshua. And there's actually been a handful of very holy saints that were Catholics, part of the Catholic Church, that had very powerful visions of the Holy Virgin Mary, which in essence, quintessentially, is a manifestation of the Holy Divine Matronita. So these are the only people. The only people that have had actual powerful visions of Shekhinah are the grandmasters and divine men of Israel. These are the Jews that I'm speaking about. And as far as Ephraim or Yosef is concerned, we only have, a handful of holy Catholic saints. Okay, so I hope that you can begin to understand the massive implications and ramifications of this. And so, because of this vision of Shekhinah, I felt it as a confirmation that indeed I must do this video in an attempt to raise the fallen virgin Yisrael. So with that said, we can proceed and begin the teaching. Now again, as I'm going to be exposing a lot of stupidity and spiritual blindness and ignorance in this video, I just want to make a few additional preliminary points regarding Shekhinah. Okay, putting things into context, into current context, right? We have all of these ignorant, spiritually blind Christians and Messianic Jews. They like to use this word Shekhinah because they've heard it a lot from the Jews. And their understanding of Shekhinah is that it's the presence of God. That's all they know. They're so massively ignorant and spiritually blind and uninitiated that that's all they know about Shekhinah. Little do they know that Shekhinah has everything to do with the consort of Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, the holy goddess. So you have all these Messianic Jews and Christians that are just massively ignorant. Then on top of that, we have a large proportion of very stupid, these are the stupid, retarded Christians that are so anti-Semitic that they bash and hate Christians and Messianic Jews that invoke Shekhinah and talk about Shekhinah. They think that Shekhinah is some form of ancient pagan worship. That it's the ancient pagan worship of Lilith and Ishtar and what the ancient Israelites were involved in. At least the bad, evil ancient Israelites. That's what they think. They're so stupid and so retarded, so uninitiated. They're just absolutely clueless. The only adjective that I can use to describe these Christians is just stupid and retarded. They're absolutely stupid and retarded. I make no apology for these statements. This is the truth. Too bad if it hurts you. Too bad if you're offended. I don't really care. This is the truth. Deal with it. Get over it. My hope and prayer is that Hashem will remove the blindness, the scales on the stupidity and the retardation. But this is the situation that we're in. The situation that we're in is that 99% of Jews and Christians have no idea, have no knowledge, and no wisdom of the Holy Goddess. Just a bunch of ignorance, stupidity, and retardation. And then you wonder why a son of King David, I, the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, am yelling from the pulpit. I'm yelling and I'm screaming, trying to get all of God's children's attention. Because they're all stupid, ignorant, and clueless, and don't know what's going on. They don't understand the root and origin and causes of our situation. And it's like I'm the only one that knows and sees and understands this, and is like speaking up and yelling about this. This is very, very momentous. Okay, so now that I've established that, we can actually proceed into the essence of the matter. So we're going to begin in the Holy Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin in folio 22a. And this is what it says. And listen very carefully. It begins by stating, Rab Eliezer says, concerning anyone who divorces his first wife, even the altar sheds tears about him, as it is stated. And further, this you should do, cover the altar of Adonai with tears, with weeping and sighing, for his no longer showing regard to the offering, nor receiving it with goodwill from your hand. And he's quoted Malachi chapter 2, verse 13. It is also written, yet you say, why? Because Adonai has been witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously, though she is your companion and the wife of your covenant, quoting Malachi chapter 2, verse 14. Okay, so we need to understand that there's a powerful connection being made here in this passage. And the connection is between one's wife and the holy altar, namely the holy temple. It's a very, very momentous, powerful connection. Which then leads us to ask the question, in the oracle in Malachi, who is the wife of thy youth, and who is the wife of thy covenant? Who is this referring to? So let us dive into the actual passage. And you can see here that I have Young's literal translation of the actual verses. I guess you could say I got lazy with giving my own English translations. But what we need to understand is that there are many levels to the verses. Now, as we see in the Talmud gives one level of understanding to the verses. And here in the literal interpretation of the underlying Hebrew given by Young's literal translation, we have another level to the verses, okay? So in this level, Adonai is actually saying that he doesn't like the fact that the Israelites are covering and weeping over the altar. Whereas in the Talmudic passage, they give another level to the verses where actually Hashem is saying you should be crying and weeping over the altar. Now, we are dealing with esoteric exegetical constructs here, and we need to understand this. Absolutely, you can have different levels of the verses contradicting each other. This is just the nature of the Holy Word. So we need to ask then, why is Hashem upset with the Israelites crying and weeping over the altar? Well, we'll get to this a little bit later in the teaching. But what is of relevance here is, who is the wife of thy youth, and who is thy covenant wife? And again, we see in these verses that there's additionally a connection between the holy altar and temple and a wife, the covenant. And so this is not lost on the ancient sages. They also make the connection. So the connection mainly is between what we would say is, quote unquote, the wife, the woman, which is the wife, and the holy altar or the holy temple. Understand the connection. This is very, very profound, very, very deep. Now, this is where I really, really want to expose the stupidity and ignorance and spiritual blindness, specifically and namely in Christianity. What you see before you are some of the most famous and renowned Christian commentaries to these verses. Okay? Now, I've happened to read all of the renowned famous Christian commentaries to these verses. I have but just a few here. Okay. Now they are all in accord in stating that these verses in Malachi, that the literal understanding of these verses is that in context, what we have is the Israelites are divorcing their Israelite wives to marry Gentile women. Okay. Now, this is a demonstration of very profound stupidity. Okay. We need to understand that in ancient Israel, that the Israelites are a superior race. Much indeed, in many ways, in one such way that some of the most beautiful women in the world are of Israeli stock. Look no further than Esther, who was probably one of the most beautiful Jewish women in the entire world. Really Israeli. Now, I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about Jewish women here. Okay, I'm not talking about Jewish women. Understand, I'm talking about Israelite or Ephraimite women. It is Israeli and Ephraimite women that are some of the most beautiful women in the world. This is a fact. Now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, if it's going over your head, then you're not initiated. You're not anywhere near my level to even begin to understand the essence of what I am saying here. This is only initiates and adepts who are initiated at the highest levels will understand what I'm saying here. So it makes no sense then, with that understanding, for Israelite men to be divorcing their beautiful Israeli wives to marry Gentile women. It makes no sense. These Christian commentators are just very stupid and very ignorant and very spiritually blind. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't belong. They're not part of the established long chain of Jewish tradition. They're not part of it. They're outsiders. They have no clue. They have no understanding. About what these verses are actually talking about. So let us go even deeper. Let us continue a little later in the same folio. Rabbi Yochanan states, "For any man whose first wife dies, it is as if the temple were destroyed in his days, as it is stated, Son of man, behold, I take away from you the desire of thy eyes with a stroke, yet neither shall you make lamentation nor weep, neither shall your tears run down." Quoting Yechezkel chapter 24, verse 16. It is additionally written, "So I spoke to the people in the morning, and in the evening my wife died." Quoting verse 18. And it is written in the continuation of the same passage, "Behold, I will profane my sanctuary, the pride of your power, the desire of your eyes." Quoting verse 21, illustrating that a man's wife is as precious to him as the temple is for the entire Jewish nation. Everything is beautifully summarized here in this Talmudic passage. It's more than evident now of what is being revealed, that truly Shekhinah dwelled in the holy temple. The presence of the holy goddess filled the holy temple. There's this inextricable link between the holy goddess and the holy temple. As we see here from the oracles, that where we have, this is Adonai, this is Yod He Vav He. Yod He Vav He himself tells Yechezkel, "So I spoke to the people in the morning, and in the evening my wife died." This is Yod He Vav He speaking, saying that he has a wife. It's so evident, it's so obvious that he has a consort, that he has a mate. Who is this wife of Yod He Vav He? Who is the consort of Yod He Vav He? None other than Malchut, the holy divine Matronita. Why is he saying that she has died? Because she has left the holy temple. The holy temple, which is her body, has been destroyed, and her spirit, her presence has risen. Just as the spirit of a body, just as the spirit of a woman rises upon death, so the presence of Malchut rose upon the death and destruction of the holy temple. Everything is interconnected. He says, "Son of man, behold, I will take away from the desire of your eyes with a stroke." And after he says his wife died, what does he say? What does he say after he says that his wife died? "Behold, I will profane my sanctuary." This is ancient exegesis at its finest. The juxtaposition of the verses indicates a connection and equivalence to the two verses, namely the connection between Yod-Heh Vav-Heh's wife, who is Malchut, and his sanctuary, the holy temple. I expect all of you listening to more than understand now. It's more than obvious. It's more than evident. Okay? I mean, this is just proof of just the immense spiritual blindness and stupidity and ignorance of all the Christians and even Messianic Jews. But if we go into the actual passage here in Yechezkel, we can see that Adonai says regarding this, he says, cease to groan. He says, cease to groan. So if we go back to Malachi chapter 2, then that oracle now makes more sense. When he's referring to the wife of thy youth and the wife of thy covenant, he is of course speaking of none other than Shekhinah, Malchut. And here we can see in these verses in Yechezkel that Adonai is saying, cease to groan. And when we read Malachi chapter 2, there he also states how he doesn't like the fact that the Israelites are weeping over the altar. So if we go back to Malachi chapter 2, now I want to read to you the full passage in Malachi chapter 2, beginning in verse 13, and I have before you here the Superior Septuagint translation, which begins by stating, and these things which I hated you kept doing. You would cover the altar of Adonai with tears and weeping and laborious groaning. Is it still appropriate to look at sacrifice or to receive as something acceptable from your hands? So here we have Adonai saying, what is he's saying? I hate. What does he hate? He's saying, I hate the fact that you are weeping and groaning over the altar. If we go back to Yechezkel chapter 24, he confirms this by also saying, hey, by the way, don't groan over the destruction of the temple. And the Israelites' response is basically asking Adonai, why? Now, this is a great holy mystery. Why? And there's many levels to the answer given in the original Hebrew. Because Adonai was a witness between you and between the wife of your youth whom you abandoned, though she is your companion and the wife of your covenant. Whom did the Israelites abandon? They abandoned the holy goddess, the holy divine Matronita. That's who they abandoned. That's the great sin here. It's the profanation and rejection of the holy divine Matronita. Now, what do the ancient oracles state? They say, she has become the chief cornerstone whom the builders have rejected. She is the chief cornerstone because the builders have rejected her. Who are the builders? They are the Jewish leaders, the Jewish Rabbanan, the leaders of Christianity, the pastors of Christianity, the scholars of Christianity and Edom, the scholars and Rabbanan of Judaism. The scholars and the leaders of both houses of Yisrael are the builders whom have rejected the chief cornerstone. And no one else did it, and the remnant of his spirit. And you said, what else does Elohim seek but offspring? And be vigilant in your spirit, and do not forsake the wife of thy youth. Listen, do not forsake her. And yet she has been forsaken for 2,000 years now. For 2,000 years, she has been forsaken by all the stupid, ignorant, and spiritually blind Christians, and to a large extent, Jews. But since you hate her, you should send her away, says Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael. Then impiety will cover over his garments, says El Shaddai, and be vigilant in your spirit, and do not abandon her. You who provoked Elohim with your words and said, how did we provoke him? By saying, everyone who does evil does good before Adonai, and he delighted in them. And where is the Elohim of justice? He said, if you hate her, send her away. That's what we have with all of these really stupid and retarded Jews and Christians who don't know about the Holy Divine Matronita and liken her worship to ancient pagan worship, thus hating her. Every time you meet and you see a stupid, retarded Christian or Jew seeing a holy saint like myself worshiping the holy goddess and banning us and hating us, it is an affront and hate to the Holy Divine Matronita. It is a rejection of the Holy Divine Matronita through spiritual blindness, ignorance, and I would go as far as to say stupidity and retardation. As the ancient Hebrew proverb states, it is an abomination in the land when the maidservant overtakes the mistress. For 2,000 years, the maidservant has taken the position of the mistress. And Israel is in large part to blame. And the holy saints weep on a daily basis because of this in their attempts to raise the Holy Virgin. As it is written in the ancient oracles, woe, woe, for the Holy Virgin of Yisrael has fallen. Raise the tabernacle of King David. So hopefully now you can begin to understand why I'm all excited, why I'm all emotional. Because we worship the Holy Goddess, Baruch Hi, blessed is she, the Holy Divine Matronita, who I entirely love with all my heart, spirit, and mind. I'm completely mad and in love, madly in love with my Holy Divine Mother, the Holy Divine Matronita. Baruch Hi, blessed is she. So understand what has been taught and revealed here, and raise the tabernacle, the sukkah of Melech David. And focus all your heart, mind, and soul to raising the Holy Virgin of Yisrael. So with that said, Shalom wa Salam.